Dear God, you frightened me, and welcome to An Order of Preference, a show in which I take a look at the work of an actor, a director, a musician, or just a general artist and rank their work in order of my preference, you dirty, dirty dog. I said in my last video that I was going to try to upload roughly every week, and it's been a hot minute since I've actually filmed anything. I apologise for that. As I said before, time is a construct and life is just an endless whirl of chaos that we may never escape from. But let's forget about all of the nihilism for a second, because today we're talking about Mr. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright is a beloved English director, screenwriter and producer, most known for his use of rhythm and comedy in fast-paced action films. One of his first directing jobs was on the TV series Spaced that featured Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, before then directing the three-flavour Cornetto trilogy, which was written by both Wright and Pegg. His next film, Last Night in Soho, is said to come out this year, and it is a psychological horror film starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Matt Smith, amongst many others. It looks incredible, even though I've not even seen a trailer for it yet. I'm already sold. But Wright has already released some of my favourite films, and I can't wait to talk about them. Before we begin though, technically Edgar Wright's career began with a film called A Fistful of Fingers, which was released in I believe 1995, and it was a comedy action western film. However, it was only released on VCR at the time, and in an interview Edgar Wright said that when he was editing the film he just realised that it wasn't very good and he didn't really want people to see it. I did try to see if I could get a copy for myself, but that would also mean getting a VHS player, and I didn't really have the effort, energy, or money for that right now. And if what he said is true and it's not very good, I don't really see much point in considering it. So I'm going to be analysing his films from 2004 onwards. Okie dokie, if you're strapped in, let's give it a whirl! Shaun of the Dead is the first installment in the three-flavoured Cornetto trilogy, and if you don't count A Fistful of Fingers, it is Edgar Wright's full-length directorial debut. Simon Pegg plays Shaun, a salesman whose life has no real direction. However, his uneventful life takes some turn when he has to single-handedly deal with an entire community of zombies. The film is a really innovative, fast-paced and ultimately clever film, which is a wonderful contrast to the standard of some of the zombie apocalypse films that get made, especially after this Songbird thing that Michael Bay has released about COVID. Fucking hell. I can watch a zombie film and I can have a good time, but it probably won't stick with me for very long. Even Zombieland didn't really do it for me, it felt too on the nose. But this film is definitely more focused on the relationships explored in the film and the dynamics between the characters rather than the apocalypse that's happening. It's an excellent introduction to Edgar Wright's style, using rhythm and pacing as a key tool in emphasizing both the action and the comedy. I'll try to be as subtle as possible for the people that have not seen it, but the use of Don't Stop Me Now by Queen is just the most wonderful use of pretty much any song in this type of movie I've seen. However, as it's a first film, although great, these things are very much in your face and not very nuanced. They're still impressive, but when comparing them to his other films, you can tell how much he is able to blend it in and still make it as impactful, but almost like you're not even really fully appreciating how much effort has gone into it. It was met by critical acclaim and obviously started the three-flavour Cornetto trilogy, which is one of the most beloved British film trilogies of all time. And while this film is great, it is probably the weakest of the trilogy to me. It still has perfectly executed comedy, excellent action, and has emotional depth to a certain extent. It just doesn't do as good a job as the other two films, in my opinion. And I can't say it's aged like fine wine. I mean, are we just gonna pretend that Nick Frost doesn't say the N-word in this film? Are we just gonna keep pretending that he didn't do that? There was no need for it. Nothing led up to that being an appropriate response to a group of white people. It was just really unnecessary. All in all though, I did enjoy the film. I just didn't feel impacted as much as I did by Edgar Wright's other films. I just thought it was a good time and then pretty much forgot about it. But that being said, definitely check it out because it is an excellent film for fans of disaster movies, action movies, or really good comedy. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a comedy action movie that came out in 2010, based on the graphic novels of the same name. Scott Pilgrim, played by Michael Cera, meets a mysterious girl that he falls in love with, but then realizes he needs to defeat every one of her 7 evil exes in order to be with her. I have complicated feelings about this one. I definitely think this is a kind of hit or miss type of film, and most of the time it was a hit for me. When I sat down and started watching the film, I immediately thought, I love this. This is going to be near the top of my list. The humor was ridiculously stupid but enjoyable. The performances were very funny and likable, and it's generally a very ambitious film in terms of its production. Like, it looks insane. But then from about the 60-minute mark, I started getting tired. This is one of the films that I feel like Edgar Wright's talent for pace actually kind of failed him a little bit. The film started pretty much at 100 and then didn't stop the entire time. And while I was gripped the entire time, I was just getting a bit annoyed almost because there was no break, there was no pacing, because it was all fast-paced. It was all really, really funny and really tongue-in-cheek and self-aware. It just got old after a while for me. And it doesn't help that I have complicated feelings about Michael Cera. He just unsettles me. Also, the character of Scott Pilgrim, I just thought he was an asshole like pretty much the entire time. That was probably the point, but I didn't root for him at all. And also, I know one of the exes was female. However, it just seemed a bit icky that they were fighting over this girl. Like, let her make her own fucking decisions. Like, why do they need to fight? Why it gotta be violence though? But it has to be said, this film is hilarious, and I was laughing the entire way through, and I had a blast. There are moments from this film that I had been quoting and found funny, and I'd seen clips of for ages, and I didn't even realize they were from this film. I could have sworn the bread makes you fat scene was from a different film that I'd seen before. But it was in this film that I'd never seen before. But I'd seen that scene so many times, and then I dissociated. The film is really, really great, and it's fun. It's an adrenaline-fueled drug treatment that is very self-aware. It just kind of missed the mark for me at certain points. My favorite Edgar Wright films are the ones that balance really good comedy and action with really good character development and relationships, and I think that is what Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was missing. Whenever I see people talking about the Cornetto trilogy, this film always ends up on the bottom of their list, and I have no idea why, and I will not accept any of the World's End slander on this channel, please and thank you. In an attempt to fulfill their epic pub crawl left incomplete 20 years ago, 5 friends return to their hometown. However, they are inadvertently burdened with the task of saving mankind. This film was actually probably my favourite Edgar Wright film for a good number of years. I adore this film. Every single time I see it, it makes me laugh, it makes me sit on the edge of my seat, and it makes me cry every single time. You know, when I was saying Scott Pilgrim didn't have the emotional depth that I wanted from these kind of films, The World's End has that in spades. The film is effectively about refusing to grow up and leaving the glory days behind, and the relationship that that process has with alcoholism. I think it's Simon Pegg's best performance. As Gary King, he transforms and is hilarious, but is also heartbreaking in his self-destruction. Nick Frost as well as Andrew Knightley is just excellent. He's so good. He was kind of playing very similar characters in the previous 2 films in the trilogy, and this very much felt like a different path for him, and I think it really, really worked. Eddie Marsan as Peter as well is so sad. It's so sad, but he's so cute. What a lovely little man. From the start of the film, the tone is set. There is an... Oh, fucking hell, did you just hear my jaw crack? Holy shit. From the start of the film, the tone is set. There is an intense, fast-paced flashback scene with the words muttered, "How could life get any better than this?" followed by Gary King in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting saying that it never did. Then, following Gary on a quest to reclaim his childhood and his friends, effectively enabling him, is interrupted by an alien race that is taking over their hometown, and it's absolutely fucking ridiculous, but it's so well done. The comedy and action are both really consistent all the way throughout, but it also gives us time to process everything that's happened and give us time to be emotional about the emotional parts of the film. If you really like this film but you just prefer the other two films in the trilogy, that's totally fine, go off. But if you think that this is a bad film, I'm very upset, please leave me while I weep. Baby Driver came out in 2017 and it follows Baby, played by Ansel Elgort, a former getaway driver who is forced to partake in a final heist by his former crime boss who is threatening to hurt his girlfriend if he refuses. But the plan goes awry in the most spectacular of ways. This film is a little bit tainted for me now because it features Kevin Spacey, who was very much cancelled pretty much the same year as it came out, and it also stars Ansel Elgort, who I think got cancelled last year, but no one's really talking about it anymore. I'm pretty sure they're still planning to release West Side Story with him in it, so I guess he got lucky there. We love Hollywood. We love the progression. Yes. Awful Men aside, this film is a masterpiece. I've got the soundtrack on vinyl, and whenever I listen to it, I know exactly what point is in the film. I remember the shots to go with the specific beats in the music. It's so intricately crafted, and it's so gorgeous. Oh, it's just, yeah, do you get it? Terminology. While this is also a hilarious film, it's more action thriller centric, and it's actually a really refreshing break from the work that Edgar Wright would produce, even though we were definitely not bored with what he was already producing. It was just nice to see him take a more serious route. I'm going to talk about the soundtrack again, I'm sorry. The soundtrack is so perfectly curated, and the whole movie plays like a ballet or a modern dance to that soundtrack, as if we are watching them drive over the sheet music almost. I'm not really usually a fan of like crime films. At this point, what film am I a fan of? Why the fuck am I here? But the perplexity of the character of Baby, his backstory, and his relationship with his adoptive father, his girlfriend, and his relationship with Doc, the crime boss, they're so layered and interesting. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but the scene that involves a pole, I guess, is one of the coolest scenes to me because I did not see it coming and I lost my fucking mind. It's such a tonal shift in the film that comes out of nowhere but also makes perfect sense from how the pressure's been building this entire time. Performances are also near perfect. This is almost definitely Ansel Elgort's best performance, but that's not really saying a lot, is it, Augustus? Kevin Spacey is also annoyingly good, but I don't want to talk about him. But goddamn, Lily James, John Hamm, Elsie Gonzalez, Jamie Foxx, is this film called Baby Driver or Bisexuality the fucking movie? I do think Baby Driver is a near perfect film. I try and separate the art from the artist, but I do think if the cast were slightly better people, it might have been at the top of my list. Call me old-fashioned, but I like the people in my films to be good people. Wait, that's not old-fashioned at all. Hollywood has always been corrupt and evil. Woohoo! Hot Fuzz came out in 2007 and it was the second film in the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy. Simon Pegg plays a police officer, Nicholas Angel. He is known to be the best across London, and his seniors are jealous of his achievements and transfer him to a remote village where he encounters various disappearances and deaths that no one else in the village believe are murders. Hot Fuzz to me is one of, if not the best British comedy film I've ever seen. As I've said before, I'm not much of an action film fan usually, and much like a lot of people recently, I don't like the police. But this film is so enjoyable, it's so ridiculous, especially if you come from a small town such as the one portrayed in the film, because I kind of feel like I do. Every time I watch the film, I laugh as hard as I did the first time I watched it. I'm on the edge of my seat as much as I was the first time I watched it, and I enjoy it more and more every single time I watch it. It ages so well. It plays on the fake niceness of small conservative towns and makes satire out of them in the most satisfying way. I think one of the best things about the Cornetto trilogy is it does focus primarily on Simon Pegg and Nick Frost because that's what makes it the trilogy. It's focused on them, but it's not entirely focused on that. It's very much an ensemble performance. The performances from Timothy Dalton, Jim Broadbent, Olivia Colman, Bill Bailey, Edward Woodward, Lucy Punch, I could go on and on and on. Those performances make the film what it is. No character doesn't have a hilarious moment in this film that you remember and quote for years after you've seen it. The action is also so well choreographed and it's really story as well, which is gruesome but exhilarating, especially if you're a fan of that kind of thing. The story of Nick Frost's character's mom and Jim Broadbent's wife as well is so ridiculous in the grand scheme of things, but when you're immersed in that world and that story, it's a really emotional plotline and a really good climax in the film. I could spend the next 20 minutes just reciting the quotes from this film that I use on the daily, but I'm not going to. Why don't we just do an outro instead? And there we go, the end of the list and the end of the video. Sorry this one was a little bit chaotic. I have a lot to do and it's all getting to me, but I did want to talk about these films and how much I enjoy them. I urge you to watch these films for yourself, make up your own opinion, let me know what you think about them, and let me know what you want me to talk about in the next video. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. See you later!